What's up, everybody? My name is Gabor and I'm your marketing and primarily online marketing mentor from Budapest, Hungary. Before we get started with today's mentor session, I wanted to share a quick story before we get into the questions. Yesterday, I actually just attended an event with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, who was visiting. I think it was his first time here in Budapest or Hungary in general. And, you know, it was an awesome event, but it really paled in comparison to all the events that we have been doing inside Accelerator's organization. And that's one of the things that really I've always found whenever I went to different events, no matter how big the name of the speaker was or how much hype there was around the event. If you look at the actual value that's being delivered, and I'm sure that, you know, basically all the people who have been to an AO event could confirm this as well, there's really nothing like this group out there in terms of just the amount of personal attention and customization that we get in terms of the advice we are given and the amount of care that the mentors here in this group have to actually helping us and answering our questions. So I just wanted to get that out there before we get started with this live stream, just so that, you know, if you haven't been to an AO event, first of all, I would highly recommend that you do go to one, and also just, you know that you are in a very special place if you are new here. If you're old here, then you probably already know. So with that said, let's get into today's questions. We have quite a few, and they are actually great questions. So the first one comes from Stella Njezic, and their question is, if it is not only paid ads and email marketing, what else do you think I could do so more people find out about my brand? Background of the question: I own a small sportswear brand in Croatia that has been on the market for 18 months. I run ads and have a new email marketing strategy. What else can I do to reach new buyers? Okay, Stella, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice on this one. One of them is something that we are currently doing. One of them is something I see a lot of people in your industry doing. And the third one is going to be kind of a contrarian idea for you to think about, okay? So, first of all, something that we are doing. My company, Rubicon, has really relied on primarily paid advertising and email marketing in the last couple of years to drive new customer acquisition. And as far as I can gather from your questions, you are in a similar place as well. What I found over the past year was that the effectiveness of paid advertising on a lot of the traditional channels, primarily Facebook and Instagram, has been diminishing a lot. It hasn't completely collapsed, but the trend is there. It's not as effective as it used to be. So with that said, what we are currently doing is going really where the attention is, which right now currently is TikTok. And, you know, honestly, I hate the whole TikTok platform. Like, I just consider it, like, I just don't like the direction social media is going, but that's where the attention currently is. So as a business owner, I also need to take responsibility, and even though I don't like it, yeah, we created our TikTok channel today, and we have a very specific strategy in place to actually grow one of our products, which resonates the most with the younger generation that really populates TikTok these days. So we're really looking at growing into a different platform. And the good thing about TikTok is that you still have a lot of organic reach, because it's a new platform. It hasn't reached maturity yet. So it's really trying to incentivize content creators and advertisers to use the platform by making it much easier to reach a high number of people without the need of paying for ads. And if you do pay for ads on TikTok, you're going to be reaching people way more cost effectively than you would on Facebook. Something I would add as well, just from a geographic point of view, is that I think TikTok is kind of reaching maturity probably in the US, but here in Eastern Europe or Central Europe where we are, I think we still have kind of a first mover's advantage. Like there's really not that many businesses on TikTok, at least here in Hungary, and I would guess that the situation is similar in Croatia. So first of all, I would really look at, could you expand to TikTok and do some kind of a strategy there? Okay, that's something that we are currently doing as well. The second thing I would look at, and this is not something we have experience in, but what I see other brands in your industry doing, is a lot of partnerships. Now, these might be partnerships on a local level, meaning you could partner up with gyms in your area or surrounding cities. Maybe go to resorts and hotels along the coastline in Croatia and see if you could get some kind of deals going with them. But I would really look at what kind of relationships can you build with point of sale locations where people actually go to work out, and see if there's an opportunity for you to actually set up some kind of in-person buying experience with these locations, or maybe a way for people there to take orders. I would really, like, especially in Croatia, given the number of tourists that you have, I would really encourage you to look at, could this be a seasonal thing? Could this be something you do with hotels? Could this be something you do in seaside towns with a lot of foreigners coming in and maybe forgetting their gym clothes at home? Like, this certainly happened to me, and hey, like, if I wanted to go down and work out in the hotel and they had some, good gym gear, I might actually buy some. So that might be worth looking at. And also I see a lot of people in your industry doing partnerships with influencers. I'm going to have to go with a guess on this one, because this is really not my field, the whole influencer game. But this might be working really, really well or really, really not well. So it's a bit of a gamble, but I see a lot of people in your industry doing that. So you might want to reach out to, maybe some of your peers who are developing similar but maybe not completely competing brands, maybe brands that are doing fashion more as opposed to gym clothing, and maybe see if you could get some experience sharing going on with them, and seeing whether or not they have been using influencers, whether or not they have found some success using them. I would definitely be looking into some of these things. And finally, here's your contrarian idea as well, because your question is really about acquiring new customers. And that has really been my traditional mindset as well. Like, I was very heavy, let's get so many new customers. But I realized in the last couple of months that I really have not been paying enough attention, and I should have been paying a lot more attention on retaining existing customers and upselling and ascending existing customers. Especially in the current economic climate that we are in, it's going to be, at least in my view, it's going to be getting more and more difficult and expensive to acquire new customers, and the existing customer base that you have is going to be becoming increasingly important. You're going to be finding that doing repeat business with the customers that you already have and putting into place strategies to upsell these customers, and maybe creating some kind of subscription or continuity program is going to be super, super helpful in growing your business. I actually just attended a 2-day conference which was 100% around getting subscription revenue and building some kind of continuity program, a membership program. So I would really encourage you to look not just at acquiring new customers, but also figuring out what are strategies that you could use to make more money out of any given number of customers that you might have. And yeah, because basically those customers are already there, you have already paid for them, you already have their contact info, and I've definitely been very guilty of not paying enough attention to this area of our business, whereas actually it is very, very crucial. Okay? Next question is also from Stella Njezic, and their question is, what do you think successful brands have in common? Background of the question. I own a small sportswear brand in Croatia. General competition in the sports apparel industry is tough. I want to learn what you think I could apply to my strategy from other successful brands. Okay, so this is a very generic question, but I'm going to try and give you my take. Like, obviously this really varies by, like, from industry to industry, but there are a couple of basic principles, and I'm sure, you know, other mentors might agree with some of these points, or they might give you a couple more insights, but basically all the successful brands that I know exactly what problem they solve and for whom, and they have a world-class marketing and sales process around that. So to expand on this, let me give you an example. I'm actually currently working on launching a completely new business line, which is actually going to be going international for the first time. Like, we are actually expanding outside of Hungary for the first time. And in order for me to do this, I really need to be crystal clear on who my customers in this new market are going to be. I need to be crystal clear on what their problem is and how my product is going to be a solution for that problem. And I need to have a damn good marketing process to actually reach those people, and then a sales process to actually sell them. Again, like I'm not really sure what else to say to this question. It's kind of generic, but yeah, these are really the 2 points that came to mind for me. Next question is also from Stella Njezic, and their question is, what tips can you share on making afternoon work more productive? Background of the question. I own a small sportswear brand in Croatia and I work as a personal trainer. Afternoons always seem to slip away without much work getting done. By implementing, which habits can I improve? Okay, this is a great question because, especially in the beginning stage, we already have our own personal time and our own personal energy, and really the growth of whatever business you're building is going to depend greatly on the amount of energy and time that you are able to invest personally, at least in the beginning. Really, kind of the initial goal is to get to the point where it's really not just dependent on your time anymore, but you have processes and a team that works even when you don't. But, you know, in this beginning stage, when you are a startup entrepreneur, you know, your time is super valuable, and it's actually going to be very valuable in the long run as well. So anyway, looking at your question, my question would be, what you describe, which is a lack of productivity, is really a symptom. We really have to try and figure out what is the cause. Is it because, and you mentioned afternoons specifically. So, you know, what is the cause? Is it because you don't have enough energy in the afternoon? Is it because you have a lot of distractions coming your way and you're just distracted and you're not able to focus on the task at hand, whatever you should be focusing on? So first of all, I would really examine myself and figure out what is causing the lack of productivity, because that's just a symptom, okay? Your problem is not that you are not productive. Something is causing that problem. So with that said, let's look at the energy part first. So I know there's a lot of various different ways of looking at, like, hey, you should join the 5 a.m. club, you should get up early, you should do this, you should do that. Like, there's a whole range of different methods that various different experts and gurus and whoever are recommending. Like, you know, you go on YouTube and you're going to find, this is the exact routine that Jeff Bezos uses, or this is the routine of Elon Musk, and there's a bunch of people going crazy and trying to copy them. You know, the problem with that approach is that different people have different bodies, different rhythms, different clocks, if you will. So basically the way my body works is going to be very, very different from the way your body works, and it's going to be very different from how, you know, whatever famous entrepreneur works. So one tip I would give you, which helped me a lot, is really not to try and copy or mimic anybody else, because they might be suited to a completely different routine than I am, but to actually play to my own advantages and figure out where in the day do I have the most energy, like what is the routine which makes the most sense for me, which is the easiest for me to follow. If I look at the most productive and most amazing days that I've had in the last couple of months, how are those days structured? When did I get up? When did I do most deep work? When did I do kind of lighter work, like answering emails or getting on Slack or calling people back on the phone? When did I go and do some sports? Like how were those best days really structured? And probably you also have a rough idea, at least, of are you a morning person, are you a night owl, like what kind of routine works best for you. And I would really try and structure my day around that. So in my specific case, I'm really not a morning person. Like if I would have to get up at fucking 5 o'clock in the morning, fuck me, like that would be the least productive day I have no idea since when. Simply because that's not how I work. Like if I got up at 5 a.m., I would not get anything done until at least lunchtime. Like I always get up at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever. Like it's not really a productive time for me. For me, usually I have a little productive window after I get into the office. I have a very productive window right after lunch. And I also have a very productive window in the evening, which is like from 6 p.m. anywhere until like 9 or 10. That's just the way I work. If I try to change that, never really worked out. Like I always had these grand designs. I'm gonna wake up earlier. It never worked out. But the things that did work out was when I accepted that this is the way my body works. I'm going to stop trying to copy everybody else that says, hey, wake up at 5 a.m. or whatever. And I'm going to try and structure my work in a way that places my most important work, the one that, or the tasks that really move the needle in my life, into those time slots where I know I'm the most productive. So right now the way I structure my day is I have something like a quick win kind of task in the morning right after I get into the office, just to make sure I get the day rolling really effectively. Then I do some lighter tasks like answering emails or some more lighter tasks that don't require so much focus, like reviewing stuff that I've delegated, answering questions from my team members, checking our Slack channels, helping everybody else. I'll do that until about lunchtime, and then I'll do my most important focused work in the 3 to 3.5 hours immediately following lunchtime, because that's when I'm the most productive. By the end of that time, I'm going to be, probably pretty tired, so I'll switch to doing, again, like answering emails, answering phone calls, meetings, like all that stuff. I'll schedule into that part of the day, and then whatever else is important, like this might be business, but it might also be something like going for a workout. Like I like to put these other things outside of business, which are also important to my life, into that 6 to 9 p.m. range, which I know works really well for me, because then I know I'm going to be fully engaged in whatever that task is. So, that's just the way I do it. This is the way it works for me. What this was really meant to illustrate is that you don't really need to fit the kind of traditional stereotypes of what some super productive person's day should look like. You can figure out for yourself what works for you, and, over time you can make some small tweaks, but I would encourage you to have some kind of thesis first around what makes you tick best, and then experimenting with that as you go along. So this is tip number 1 for energy. Because some parts of the day I'm just not going to have energy. If I try to do deep work at 4 p.m. or if I try to do it at like right before lunch, depends. Like sometimes deadlines will motivate me. So again, you could give yourself stricter deadlines where it's not just you're not just giving a deadline to yourself, but I'm talking about deadlines which you have given to the market. For example, I might do a very tight deadline for me to come up with and launch a new marketing campaign, just because it's gonna, keep me sharp and it's gonna keep me going, because like, I already sent out the messaging like, hey, we're launching this thing in 2 days. I only have 2 days to get it done, so I'm gonna get it done. That's also one way to motivate yourself. Like, if I'm near the deadline, like, I sure as hell don't notice that I don't have enough energy to get it done. And also you could incorporate a lot of kind of time hacks or like energy hacks into your afternoon. Like I usually, if I know that the afternoon is really important for me, I'll have less food for lunch because now I don't get into this post-food sleepiness. I actually have less coffee. Like I actually started reducing my caffeine intake recently because I found that it's been actually making me more fatigued, not less. I always use music in the afternoon. Like I have some really energetic music going on in my office because that also gives me energy. Like, I would just say experiment with a lot of different things, and if something works for you, then stick to it as long as it works for you. Okay, so these are my tips around energy. And something else you might want to look at is distractions. Like, are you not being productive because you have a lot of distractions during your afternoon? Like, I actually just implemented a new time management strategy where basically I'm getting very, very strict with my team that they are not allowed to call me on the phone, first of all. Like, my phone is like pretty much off throughout the day anyway, but I just told my team like, hey, no more calling me on the phone, no more running into my office with random questions, no more forwarding me emails. Like, I need to be able to be focused on the work that I'm doing. And I need to structure my week in a way that I have time to help my team members, but not to the extent that I'm not able to get whatever I'm working on done. So, if this is part of your problem, I would be happy to do a follow-up to this mentor session and deal with stricter time management and dealing with outside distractions, team members, that kind of stuff, and talk about what I'm doing there. But I feel like this might not be, just based on your question, this is probably not the cause of your lack of productivity. So, but anyway, please do a follow-up to this if you would like to discuss this more, but those are my initial tips. Okay, the next question also comes from Stella Nezic, and their question is, how do I communicate when talking to a new supplier in order to get a better deal? Background of the question, I own a small sportswear brand in Croatia and I am looking to expand my product line. I am sourcing manufacturers on Alibaba and would like to learn how to convince them in working with me or taking me seriously. Okay, Stella, this is really not my area of expertise. Like, I don't really communicate with suppliers at all. One thing I would mention though is this is actually an area of sales. You might not be selling to a customer, but you are certainly selling these manufacturers on the idea of working with you. And luckily we have a world-class sales expert here in the group, Mr. Tom Black. And, I would really recommend that you reach out to Tom and see if maybe you could work together with him on creating a plan on how to reach out to manufacturers and follow up with them. I think really within the group, Tom might be the best person for you to talk to. Okay, the next question comes from Kristen Lander, and their question is, what is the fastest, easiest thing I could do to grow my business from the stage I am at today? Background of the question, I operate an online nutrition coaching business for strength athletes. I am currently doing $120,000 in annual sales, and I have 4 coaches plus 1 administrative assistant on my team. My current way of driving new business revenue is through positioning myself as an authority in my niche via my podcast and social media. In 2023, I would like to grow my business by at least 50%. Nice goal. To accomplish that, what are some immediate things you would recommend I do in order to reach that goal? Okay, Kristen, first of all, I'm going to assume that you are a great podcaster, because otherwise, why else would you be doing a podcast, right? So I'm assuming that, you are great on the podcast and you're great to listen to. With that assumption being made, and I think I'm probably right in that assumption, with that assumption being made, you could definitely look at growing organically by becoming a guest on other people's podcasts. So, if this is an area that you're experienced in, you have a certain group of people that are already listening to your podcasts. And if you look at basically a universal truth about people that listen to podcasts, is that those people listen to podcasts. Think about it again. People that listen to podcasts listen to podcasts. Not just your podcasts, but a lot of other podcasts as well. So, if you want to reach more of the people that are already in your audience, the first thing I would do is start reaching out to hosts of podcasts that cater to a similar audience as you do, and basically pitching them on the value that you could bring to their podcast and trying to get featured on their shows. You're going to be reaching a lot of similar people to your existing audience this way. And, you asked what is the easiest thing. So this is something that you are already currently doing for yourself. And so it probably would not be such a stretch or a very difficult activity for you to do on a regular basis. The other thing I would encourage you to look at, and here's some theory to go with this practical answer. I don't know if you're familiar with the 3 types of traffic, but there's really 3 types of traffic that you're looking at. There's traffic that you earn, there's traffic that you pay for, and then there's traffic that you control. And what kind of things belong in each category? So traffic that you earn is what you are currently doing. You are putting in time and sweat equity into hosting your own podcast. If you follow the advice that I've given you, you're going to be investing your own time and energy into going on other people's podcasts. You're basically investing your time, okay? You're working more in order to reach more people. The second type of traffic is traffic that you pay for. And that is basically going on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Google, whatever, and buying ads that direct people to your website or sales funnel. The difference between the two is basically, do you have more time or do you have more money? Because if you have more time, then you're going to be putting most of your energy into getting traffic that you earn. And if you have more money, you're probably going to be investing more into traffic that you pay for. Usually these two coexist, so it's not like you're doing one or the other. Usually you're doing a combination of these two, and depending on whether or not you have more money or more time, you're going to be, leaning towards one or the other. But really the holy grail of generating traffic, which then leads to revenue online, is the third type of traffic, which is traffic that you own. And own traffic really means having your own list of people that you can reach out to at the touch of a button, or just very easily. This might be an email list, might be a list of telephone numbers, a Facebook messenger list. It might be old school physical addresses that you can send direct mail pieces to. It might be your own magazine, like we have in our case. That's also traffic that we own. It could be a lot of different things, but really email is the most conventional and the most widely used example of traffic that you own. And the great thing about traffic that you own is that nobody can take it away from you, which is, if you think about, a podcast host might say, hey, you cannot come on my show. Facebook might say, we don't like your content, we're going to ban your page. That cannot happen with traffic that you own. So you can always reach these people, and you don't have to pay to reach them, or at least you don't have to pay a lot compared to running ads on Facebook, for example. And basically, any online marketing strategy, step number one is always taking traffic that you own, taking traffic that you pay for and taking traffic that you earn and converting it into traffic that you own. Okay, so that's always the goal. Step number one is always, how do I get some kind of contact information, usually an email address, out of the people that have come to my page from my Facebook ads, for example. And really the reason for that is if you simply drive people to, let's say it's a website or a sales page, let's say maybe 1% of those people buy instantly, which is actually a pretty good number for cold traffic. What happens to the other 99%? They came, like you invested either energy or money into getting those people onto your site. They came and they left. Awesome. Whereas, most lead generation funnels where the initial goal is to get an email address or some kind of contact info out of cold traffic. Like I've had some funnels that, my less effective funnels still did about 35%. So out of 100 people coming to my site, 35 would give me their email address and I'm free to follow up with them. And on the other scale of the other side of the spectrum, the best lead generation funnel I've ever done actually converted at 95%. So imagine that out of 100 people that come to your site, 95 give you their email address, and now you can follow up with them without having to pay Zuckerberg or pay whoever for reaching these people again. So that's really the main reason, is so that you are more effective with the dollars you are spending on advertising or the time that you are investing into reaching people through a podcast, so that people don't just come to your site and leave. Okay? So you actually have a way to follow up with them. Now, to put that into practice in your niche or in your case, do you have, or first of all, where do you drive people from your podcast? And if you were going to become a guest on other people's podcasts, where would you be sending these people to? Or are you just sending them to a website where there's really not a clear path for these new prospects to follow? Or are you sending them through a very carefully designed and curated process where you know exactly the steps that they are going to be going through? And are you measuring that process as well? So really, those would be the things I would be looking at, like how clear are you on where you are sending these people from the podcasts, and what kind of system do you have in place to follow up with them. If you don't have one, that's where I would really get started, even before I started going on all these other podcasts, because you're already doing it with your own. Like I would really, doing your own podcast takes less energy and less money than going on other people's podcasts or advertising. So you actually have a good place to practice this whole idea. But if you're not sure on where you're sending these people, I would really start digging deep into creating some kind of lead generation funnel and some kind of follow-up process to take new prospects through, figuring out what KPIs you're going to be measuring through that process, and actually measuring and improving it, and having a good lead generation funnel in place before you start going and becoming guests or a guest on other people's podcasts. And from there you can always just tweak and improve the process. But that's what I would be doing. If you're interested in something like this, I would definitely be happy to do some kind of follow-up question. If you can send me maybe the link of where you are currently sending people and what your strategy is in terms of getting them to become a lead and getting them to become a buyer, I would be happy to go very specific actually on this question and reviewing your process of maybe what you could tweak or improve in your existing process. Okay, sound good? Final question comes from Josh Kiaramitaro. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I'm trying my best. So anyway, Josh's question is, what is the fastest, easiest thing I could do to grow my business from the stage I am in today? Background of the question. Instify started in August and is currently projected to do a bit less than 10. Is that 10,000? I'll assume it's $10,000 in annual sales. We currently only have John and myself on our team, and we both have full-time jobs, so we only have time right now on nights and weekends for this business. My current way of driving new business revenue is finding good product deals and ensuring the product has under 100,000 90-day bestseller rank on Amazon. In 2023, I would like to grow this business to $1 million plus in sales. To accomplish that, what are some immediate things you would recommend I do in order to reach that goal? I'd specifically love to know your thoughts on how I should transition to quitting my full-time job and going all in on this business to reach this goal. How do I know when the time is right? Awesome question, and I think at one point or another, most of the people in AO have gone through this step. So you are really in a great place to get a lot of different viewpoints around this question. So yeah, one thing, I really don't think it's going to be any one person's answer, but just within this group, you're going to be able to get 10, 15, 20 different experiences of how the existing members and mentors have gone through this process, and you're going to be able to take some of those pieces and figure out your own strategy. But here's really the couple of first things I would look at. So first of all, I would look at how many hours do you currently work in a week, taking your full-time job and taking your side hustle / business into account as well. And how many hours do you think you would be working as a startup business owner / entrepreneur? Like, I'm pretty sure most of the mentors you ask will agree that in the initial stages of growing your business, you're going to be working easily 80-hour weeks, easily 90-hour weeks. I've done it. Most of the other people in this group have done it. So the first question I have, I have no idea how much you currently work in a week, so this might be preaching to the choir here, but I would really look at the amount of time that you're working, and if you're not already at 80 or 90 hours, you probably still have a bit of room to grow, because if you have, let's say, a 40-hour job, and if you work 15 hours on your business, there is room to grow there. Like, you could be devoting more time to your business, probably both of you could. You just have to figure out where that time is going to come from. And launching a completely new business, it is really not the time when you're going to have work-life balance and holidays and all that good stuff is going to come in time. But if you're serious about launching and scaling something while you are also employed in a job, you're just being honest with you, you're going to have to make a couple of sacrifices, probably more than a few. So this is one area where I would really reflect a bit on the current situation honestly, and just get very straight with myself about the amount I'm doing currently and the amount of work that I'm potentially willing to be doing, and then seeing if there's a gap between the two and filling it if there is. The second thing I would look at is whether or not, are you an expert in this business already, or do you have a certain degree of experience, or you may be a novice who is just getting started. there's really not a lot of info around this in your question, or what your strategy is in terms of how you're going to be growing to $1 million plus. But yeah, not knowing this background, this would be the second question I ask, is that do you already have a sufficient amount of expertise within this business? Because if you don't, it's actually not all that bad. You could actually, one thing you could be looking at is, what if you actually worked in a field that provided you with relevant experience and expertise to running your business? So for example, I don't know what your job is currently, but I'll just use an example. Maybe you are working as, let's say you're an accountant, and you're trying to launch a business that is really about selling on Amazon or something to do with online marketing. Could you maybe change jobs and start working in a field that is very highly connected to selling on Amazon? Could you actually work at Amazon? Could you actually work at a company that does business with Amazon? Could you work with someone who is a seller on Amazon? Like, you know, there's a lot. One of the benefits of having a job is that you can actually get paid a fixed wage for basically gaining experience. And if you work at the right place with the right team, especially with the right boss, you could be picking up like an extreme amount of experience that you could then use in your own business. And by the way, like, it's also a very risk-free way of figuring out whether you actually really like to work in that field or in that industry without having to put up your own capital and risking your own assets. So yeah, I would really look at, if you are working in an unrelated field or an unrelated job currently, could you maybe change jobs and work in a related field so that you are actually gathering experience for your business during your 40 hours of working. And, you know, finally, I would look at this from a monetary aspect. Like, how much money would you need to have saved in order to quit your job and know that, hey, even if I have no cash flow from my business, and even if I have to invest some of my savings into my business, I'm good for 6 months, I'm good for 9 months, I'm good for a year. Like, what would that number be for you? Alternatively, and by the way, these can work in conjunction as well, what would the necessary salary be from your own business in order for you to quit your job? And then you can kind of reverse engineer the amount of sales that you would need to be generating in order to pay yourself that salary, and really get very specific here about your actual needs. And if you are not already, I would also really recommend that you start budgeting and figuring out, you know, if you're spending an X amount of dollars in any given month, you know, how much of that is actually unnecessary? How much of that is actually on stuff that you don't actually really need? You know, like in my case, like, since I started budgeting, like, yeah, I spend way more than I need to on going out to restaurants, and spending way more than I need to on drinking some good wine. Like, if I got into a situation where I needed to save money quickly, or if I wanted to detach from my current source of income, like, those would be the first areas where I would look at, like, do I really need to go out 2 or 3 times a week to a good restaurant? No, I don't really need to. So I can save a bit of money here, I can save a bit of money there. Like, do I really need to go driving on the racetrack and burning through an entire tank of fuel? I don't really need to do that. Like, there's, I think, a lot of room, like a lot of wiggle room for us in terms of working with our budgets. And, you know, usually most people find this, they can actually get by on a lot less than what they are used to if they actually need the money for something like launching a business, but that does require a lot of discipline. Okay, so these are really the 3 things I would look at, which is, you know, the number of hours that you're currently working, the experience that you have in the business, and maybe like what are the ways that you could get experience in your business as an employee as well, and just the whole monetary aspect, and getting very specific on that monetary aspect of detaching yourself from your current job. And maybe final piece of advice: you can always get another job. Like, it's not like if you quit in order to pursue your dreams that you're not going to be able to get hired ever again. Like, it's really as an employer, like, I'm like, even here in my part of the world, it's getting very tough to find well qualified and driven employees. And from talking with all my friends in the US, especially through AO, I hear that it's even worse from an employer's point of view there, because it's just very hard to find people. So if at one point or another you decide that, hey, you're going to be quitting your job and you're going to be going all in on your business, you always have that plan B. You can always go back and find another job. And so it's not like you're making a decision for life. You still have many options to fall back on if for whatever reason it doesn't work out. And hey, like, I think it's fair to say that we all had businesses that failed. I had my really fair share of ideas that I thought were great at the time that didn't work out. So, it's just part of the process. It might work out, it might not. Obviously, you can do quite a few things to make the odds be more in your favor, but just don't stress about it that much. Like, you have options. You will always have more options than you can imagine. Okay, those were the questions I had for today. I apologize if I came across as a little tired. I've been having a rough couple of weeks with Q4 and Black Friday coming up, and I've been attending a lot of training events and stuff that kept me off having too much sleep these days. But after I'm done with this mentor session, I'm just going to be relaxing a bit and going straight to bed, because it's been a long day. Anyway, I hope those questions have been answered. I hope my answers have been useful to you. And, much love to my AO family, and I'll catch you on the next mentor session. Have an awesome day or night wherever you are in the world.